Crowbar, The Rangers at Pointe Du Hoc, designed by Herman Luttman, published by Flying Pig Games. Hi there, my name's Neil. Welcome back to Diagonal Move. This is going to be my review of Crowbar. I've played it a few times now, and regular viewers will know I've done a series of videos highlighting one of the most recent playthroughs I did, and I've also done a more detailed kind of example of play, how to play video. So with this particular video, I'm not going to go into huge detail about how the game plays or how the mechanics work. The other thing to bear in mind, given that this is a print and play copy, when it comes to the components, I can't really give a full set of thoughts about the components because I've made them myself, basically. So there's two caveats in mind. Let's have a think about Crowbar. Let's start with the components. While, as I mentioned, I can't say much about the quality of the components in terms of the thickness of the cardboard and things like that, because it's a print and play version, I made these myself. What I can say is comments about the artwork and how the files I received when I bought the PnP game, what they were like. And I have to say, if the PnP files and the ease with which I've been able to play in PnP, even allowing for the differences between the US paper sizes and the English paper sizes, I mean, it's fantastic. Just really, really good. The map is wonderful. I mean, you've got this great big map here. It's huge, and this is going to probably be slightly smaller because of the difference in paper sizes than it would be for real. Can't confirm that, but I would expect it to be the case. It's a fantastic map. It's so big and clear and easy to see. I particularly like the way we have the different sections, and they're nicely spaced. Big squares, big counters. I haven't adjusted the sizes of these counters. They are that big, which is fantastic when you usually play those tiny little things that you get in some PnP games. The number of units on the counters there, that's the number of dice you roll in combat, which is such a nice touch, as is the way the counters multiply. So rather than having stacks of steps, you just have a new counter when you go down the strength points. The one thing I will say about the artwork is it can be a little bit tricky to see the barbed wire, but that could well be a printer issue, my side, rather than anything to do with the game. But on the whole, the components are great. They really are good. Slightly off camera, you've got the cards that come with the game, and again, you know, this is my PnP quality stuff here, but you know, the pictures and the artwork on there is superb. You know, truly great. You do get masses of stuff as well. I mean, hundreds of counters, the main board. You do have this victory track, which I'm just about to show you. I mean, I've got it in two halves, so you would normally have a second half to this, but you also have a second half of this to count, you know, the various VPs and the victory tracks and what have you. You also get a bunch of dice. These dice are ones I've had to sort of supply myself, but you know, you use 10 regular dice, and then you have custom dice, which I've obviously had to make myself. Yeah, tons of stuff. The files are really good quality. Cannot fault the components as far as I can tell with what I've got here. There are a ton of stuff. There is a ton of stuff, though. That is the thing, and it's definitely something to bear in mind if you're PnPing this. It will take you a long time to make, unless you can spend, you know, an entire weekend making the thing. You know, gameplay is different. I've not played a game quite like it before. I do believe this was based on an earlier game. I think it was something like Magnificent Style, which was a I want to say civil war game. I don't know. I've not played it, but I've not played a game where you have such a recreation of the initial rush up the beaches, off from the sea onto the beach and then up the cliff and then the fight on the land. And when you play, you have all these these units all lined up in different stages on the board, and you're trying to get them all onto the beach and then off the beach. It's so well done. It's really, really good, because if you sink the boat, you lose everybody, but then you get them onto the land, and can you get them up the beach? And really cool, really, really good sense of that rush of invasion before you can be a bit more measured when you finally get on the land. So that kind of narrative arc, if you like, is really good. The mechanics work beautifully. They really do. I mean, you roll the dice. It's a press your luck game. You roll the dice and apply the effect, and you're trying to find all these different guns and points at fortunes of war counters and what have you. But you might fight your way all the way through all these German counters, only to find, hey, I found a gun this time. The counter next to it might be something totally different. You've just been blown up, or you might find rubble, as I did in my most recent playthrough video. And it sort of illustrates the frustration, I guess, of trying to find something in the midst of all of this kind of chaos that's going on. Again, it's really, really well done. One thing I will say though is there's only one mission. I mean, this is a solo game, right? There is a co-op mode. In fact, there's a couple of co-op modes, and memory serves there's even a competitive mode, but it really feels like this is a solo game. And it's a very long solo game. There's only really one scenario. You play one game. You do the invasion, try and find the guns. That's all you do. And we're looking at a solid 3 hours to do that. And so you've either got to have time to play it all in one evening, and bear in mind it's 3 hours of gameplay. There is a setup and then an initial invasion approach phase and a bombardment, so maybe even closer to 4 realistically if you factor in setup time, what have you. So if you are looking at spending best part of 4 hours with a game, you've either got to have sufficient time to complete the thing in one go, or you've got to be able to leave it set up overnight. Now I'm lucky, I've got a coffee table I can leave set up. If you don't have that, this will be a struggle to fit in, except on occasions when you can have the whole thing over and done with in one sitting. And there's no way of varying that in the base game. There's no smaller scenario. There's no sliding scale of time that you can commit. You can't just do one sector. You have to do the whole thing or nothing at all. And that, I think for me, that will limit the number of times I get it back to the table. I mean, I've played it a bunch of times now, but I think if it was a bit shorter or there was a shorter mode, I would definitely get it back to the table more. The other thing I would say, it's very much a press your luck game, and it's quite light-hearted. But there is quite a number of complex rules to navigate. I don't necessarily mean it's not complex in the same way that many war games are, but there's a number of procedures. You do certain things here slightly differently to what you would do them on the beach, slightly differently to what you do them here. There's just off shop, there's a stack of counters. They all do something slightly different. There's about 40 different event chits, each with, different events with different effects. And each little thing adds to the overall complexity. And so for what is, as war games go, quite a light-hearted, fun game, it's really rather complex, and there's a lot to think about. And so you almost want to simplify it somehow to make it less of a learning curve. Because I think the people who would get the most out of this are the introductory gamers, because you're not really simulating what went on at the Pointe Du Hoc. I mean, you have got this really rather wonderful sense of urgency as you get over the cliffs, but you're not really simulating it in the same way you might simulate it in a bigger, more traditional hex encounter game. And so I just wonder whether the audience that would love a complex hex encounter game that does strictly simulate the action at the Pointe Du Hoc would really go for this, because it's quite luck based and it doesn't really reflect the actual units, and the units are there, but you don't have the same. It's not the same simulation feel that those hex encounter games have. But then it's a bit too much for an introductory game, which is interesting. It's very interesting. So I don't know. It's definitely, it's going to find a niche of probably experienced war gamers that want something light-hearted that can be left out overnight if they have the space, which is an interesting niche to try and fit. The other thing about this game is it's brutally difficult. I mean, it's really difficult. I've played this 5 times, I think, and I've never got off the bottom rung of the success ladder. You judge your success by a victory point scale, and I think 4 out of the 5 times I've had what's called a disgraceful performance, and the other time was a military disaster. And a lot of that, I think, is to do with how luck based it is. It's very hard to know how best to approach this. I mean, there's got to be a way. I mean, I probably haven't played it enough to really figure out the best way to mitigate all the luck. But you have the die rolls you're rolling here, and if you get stuck on the beach, as I did in my playthrough series, it then becomes incredibly difficult to get everything you need. A lot will depend on how many times you roll those event cards as well, because of the relief column moving. Yeah, very, very challenging game. Final thoughts for Crowbar, Rangers at Pointe Du Hoc. I've had a whale of a time with this game. I have had so much fun. I've already played it multiple times. I've done really, really badly, and yet I want to play it again so that I can try and beat my score. And that is something of a rarity for me. I'm normally not a big fan of solo games where you have a score that you're trying to beat, or a beat your own score kind of situation. Definitely a minority type of game for me from a solo point of view, but this one is a very, very good example of how to make that type of game stand up to repeated plays. Now that is partly due to all the luck. It is such a luck fest. I mean, you have got strategic things you can try and do, but ultimately you're rolling dice and applying effects in the hope of finding things that are placed randomly on the board. So it's a massive luck fest. And if you don't like luck fest war games, this is not going to be for you. But if you do, then it's certainly worth giving it a go. Now, what I will say though, there is only one scenario, and that's slightly frustrating because it is, as I mentioned during the main body of the review, it is a very long scenario, or at least it's long for this type of game. It's not a 16-17 hour campaign playthrough of the Normandy landings by any stretch of the imagination. This is a game that really you should be able to play in one evening, but it would be a long evening, and it's much more realistic for most people, I think, to be able to, that you would need to set this up and leave it out over a couple of evenings, probably even 3, which, you know, may limit its audience slightly, I feel. On the whole, though, if you like Luckfest games, you don't mind a bit of meat on the bones, you have got a bit of experience with war games, because this is not a beginner game, I don't think, then give it a go. You know, it's definitely worth checking out, and I would recommend it for people who have the time and the space and don't mind a bit of luck with their wargaming. That's been my review of Crowbar. Thank you for joining me for this video and for the series that I've just posted up on YouTube, if you've sat through that. Much appreciated, as always. Please do click on the like button, subscribe button, all that sort of thing, and otherwise I shall see you next time.